we are jumping right into a piece of cinematic history that is, I think it's fair to say, more universally known than almost any other. The 1939 film, The Wizard of Oz.
It really is the ultimate paradox, isn't it? Everybody knows the story. Dorothy, Toto, the journey to find a way home.
Exactly. The yellow brick road, the talking animals.
But if you actually strip that narrative away, the true history of this film is, well, it's far more dramatic, much more complicated, and in some parts, frankly, deeply troubling.
Absolutely. And that's what we want to focus on. We're going to put the plot to one side and concentrate entirely on what was happening behind the camera. We want to explore the immensely troubled production, the genuine and sometimes devastating human cost for the cast.
And then there are the staggering technical innovations they pulled off and the massive cultural force this film became almost despite itself, decades later.
So this was a Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer production MGM. It was based on L. Frank Baum's novel, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, which was published way back in 1900.
And when it first premiered, it was an immediate critical darling. The reviews were fantastic.
Yes, the critical success was right there from the start. It earned some very high honors right away, most notably the Academy Award for Best Original Song for, of course, Over the Rainbow.
And Best Original Score for Herbert Stohart.
Right. Judy Garland was also recognized, receiving an Academy Juvenile Award for her performances that year. But the real story, I think, is how its significance has just grown and grown since 1939.
Precisely. Today, it's not just a movie. It's an institutional artifact. You have to think about its official standing. It was selected for the National Film Registry in 1989.
And that was one of the very first groups of films ever chosen, right?
One of the very first. It was deemed culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. I mean, that's foundational material for American culture right there.
And the recognition is global, too. It's one of the few films chosen for UNESCO's Memory of the World International Register in 2007, recognizing its importance to, well, all of human heritage.
It's incredible. And maybe the most telling modern metric of its continued power is that just in 2022, Variety ranked it second in its inaugural 100 Greatest Movies of All Time list.
Second place. That's amazing.
And that position, really, it's largely thanks to its second life on television. The U.S. Library of Congress currently names it the most seen film in cinematic history.
And that's purely because it became this annual tradition in American homes starting in the 1950s.
Exactly. It's a genuine phenomenon. But to really grasp how such a singular, unified vision emerged from all of this, we have to start at the beginning, with its messy, chaotic origins.
So let's unpack that. How did MGM even decide to risk a massive budget on what was at its heart a fantastical children's story?
The motivation was, well, it was simple economics, driven by what you could call pure competitive panic.
Panic.
Yes. MGM only greenlit the project after Walt Disney's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs came out in 1937 and proved, contrary to a lot of studio wisdom at the time, that a feature-length fantasy film aimed at children could be a colossal commercial success.
So they saw the dollar signs.
They absolutely did. MGM bought the rights in January 1938 from Samuel Goldwyn.
And their early ideas for it were a little strange. I read that Goldwyn apparently saw it as a vehicle for the comedian Eddie Cantor.
That's right. He even suggested Cantor play the Scarecrow. But the real sign of just how chaotic the production process was the script itself. It wasn't really written. It feels more like it was assembled by an army.
It was absolutely scripting by committee, taken to an almost industrial level.
It was. While Noah Langley, Florence Ryerson, and Edgar Allan Wolfe share the final screen credit, the sources show that at least 11 different writers contributed to the screenplay.
11? And they were often working in isolation, right, contradicting each other's ideas during the whole development process.
Exactly. And we were talking about some serious literary and cinematic muscle here. That list of uncredited contributors includes giants like Herman J. Mankiewicz, who would later co-write Citizen Kane.
And Ogden Nash, the poet, was involved too, plus several of the film's actual directors.
Even the producer, Mervyn LeRoy, and the composer, E.Y. Yip Harburg, were heavily involved in the writing.
Harburg's involvement is especially crucial, isn't it?
It is. His son and biographer claimed that Harburg essentially wrote all the connecting dialogue, the setup for the songs, even those crucial scenes where the wizard gives the companions their tokens, the heart, the brain, the nerve.
So it was the songwriter, paradoxically, who pulled all the philosophical threads together into a cohesive story.
That's the claim. And that kind of constant rewriting meant there were major shifts in the core premise of the film. Initially, some writers seriously suggested removing all the magical elements.
Can you imagine? What would have been left?
The sources show one early recommendation was that the scarecrow should just be a man so impossibly stupid that he could only scare crows, and the Tin Woodman would be a heartless criminal sentenced to wear a metallic suit.
So they wanted to ground it in some kind of Depression-era realism.
Exactly, which would have just neutered the entire fantasy and the emotional core of the story. Thankfully, those ideas were rejected.
But one key idea did stick around.
Yes. Noel Langley's suggestion that Oz was merely a lengthy, elaborate dream sequence. That premise, while it sort of softens the fantasy for audiences, was a calculated risk that ultimately paid off. It insulated the film from criticisms that straight fantasy outside of Disney animation was just too unrealistic for adult audiences.
That instability wasn't limited to the page, though. It was constant in the director's chair. This is a film that feels so incredibly unified and consistent.
And yet, it cycled through an astonishing number of directors in a really short period of time.
Victor Fleming is the main name we all know, but he was eventually yanked mid-production, like a relief pitcher in the ninth inning.
Right, to go take over the equally troubled and ultimately massively successful production of Gone with the Wind, also in 1939.
But the instability started much, much earlier than that.
Oh, yes. Norman Taurog directed the initial Technicolor test sequences. Then came Richard Thorpe, who was swiftly dismissed after only a few weeks.
And why was he let go?
The studio felt he was rushing the production. He wasn't getting the right performances from the actors, especially from Judy Garland. They felt he wasn't capturing the right sort of innocent quality.
So then we get to George Cukor. He came in temporarily as a creative consultant. He didn't actually shoot a single foot of film, but his contribution was arguably one of the most important creative shifts in the entire movie.
It was a crucial, defining moment for Judy Garland's character. When Cukor came aboard, the studio had Garland in a blonde wig and this heavy baby doll makeup.
Trying to make her look like a different, more stereotypical fantasy heroine.
Exactly. And Cukor looked at her and essentially told her, forget all that, be yourself, be the plain girl next door, wear a simpler dress, and lose the wig.
That direction meant they had to reshoot everything they had done up to that point. But it gave us the iconic, sincere Dorothy that we all know.
It really did. And even after Fleming left for Gone with the Wind, the film still wasn't done with directors. The veteran director, King Vidor, stepped in and agreed to direct the final 10 days of principal photography.
And those final 10 days were critically important.
Absolutely. Vidor directed the bulk of the monochromatic Kansas scenes, including Garland's iconic, heartbreaking performance of Over the Rainbow. It is genuinely remarkable that a film with 4 uncredited directors and a whole room full of writers came out feeling so structurally and emotionally unified.
It really does speak to the strength of the original book and maybe the final editing process.
And what's fascinating, if you look at the production notes, is that the single element that demanded the most chaotic creative energy was color itself.
Right. This is the dawn of 3-script Technicolor, and MGM was fixated on making it a visual spectacle, regardless of the cost or the complexity.
The sheer detail they obsessed over is it's indicative of that focus. The MGM art department spent nearly a week just settling on the precise shade of yellow for the yellow brick road.
A whole week on a color swatch.
They were inventing the palette for screen fantasy. Every single choice was scrutinized because it was so new and so expensive to get wrong.
And of course, the great technical challenge everyone remembers is that transition scene. The moment Dorothy steps out of the sepia-toned Kansas farmhouse into the vibrant Technicolor world of Oz.
That was a very sophisticated and expensive effect for the time. They initially considered the labor-intensive method of hand-tinting individual frames to maintain the sepia look.
But that was just too costly.
Prohibitively costly. So they pivoted to a classic piece of practical filmmaking that relied on, well, sleight of hand.
The solution involved painting the entire interior of the farmhouse set a sepia tone.
Exactly. So when the door opens, the person stepping out is not Judy Garland. Not yet. It's a stand-in named Bobby Cochet, and she's wearing a sepia-colored gingham dress.
So she walks out, and then?
Cochet takes a few steps, backing out of the frame, and in that momentary transition when the camera moves through the doorframe, Judy Garland steps in. She's illuminated by those blindingly bright Technicolor lights, wearing her famous blue dress.
And the sepia paint on the interior of the doorframe briefly tints Garland as she enters, which creates that smooth illusion of transition between worlds. It's just a brilliant, simple, practical effect.
It really is. But that intense focus on maximizing the visual impact of the new technology, the color, the lighting, the effects, That leads us directly to the incredible human sacrifices involved in achieving that vision.
Particularly concerning the actors and the dangerously primitive makeup technology that they were using on set.
This is where we have to slow down and just acknowledge the severity of what the cast went through. We are talking about genuine physical and emotional trauma that defined their experience on this film.
Let's start with the key casting decisions, which themselves were defined by a series of swaps and some pretty significant near misses.
Indeed. The studio originally wanted Shirley Temple to play Dorothy. She was the biggest child star of the era.
But there were contract issues, I believe.
That's right. Contractual complications made the deal impossible, which allowed Judy Garland, who was already under contract with MGM, to secure the role. This was despite the studio having concerns about her appearance and her age. She was 16, playing a 12-year-old.
And the famous companions also played a bit of musical chairs.
They did. Ray Bolger, who became the iconic Scarecrow, was actually cast initially as the Tin Man, but Bolger desperately wanted the Scarecrow role.
Why was that?
Because his childhood idol, an actor named Fred Stone, had played the original Scarecrow on stage in the 1902 Broadway production.
So he lobbied for it.
He lobbied hard and successfully traded roles with Buddy Ebsen, who had agreed to play the Tin Man. In fact, Ebsen helped Bolger develop the Scarecrow's loose, wobbly walk before settling into his new metallic persona.
And the wizard himself, W.C. Fields, famously turned it down.
Yes, over a fee dispute. He asked for too much money. Wallace Beery lobbied for the part, but the extended shooting schedule scared him off, so they eventually landed on Frank Morgan,
Who played 5 distinct characters: Professor Marvel, the wizard, the gatekeeper, the carriage driver, and the wizard's guard. That's a truly efficient piece of casting.
It is. But now we have to turn to the most disturbing part of this whole production history, the physical hardships, specifically related to that pioneering makeup.
Okay, let's unpack the story of Buddy Ebsen. This is just a stark warning about early film technology. He had completed all his rehearsals, recorded all his songs as the Tin Man before production even started.
His makeup was critical to the character. It was composed of a very, very fine aluminum powder. And just 10 days into the shoot, Ebsen began suffering a horrific toxic reaction from repeatedly inhaling that aluminum dust.
And we need to be clear, this was acute poisoning. It wasn't just a simple allergic reaction, as the studio tried to claim at first.
Not at all. Ebsen was hospitalized in critical condition. He couldn't breathe properly. He had to spend 2 weeks on oxygen, and he was forced to leave the project immediately. It's a profound moment of failure in industrial safety standards.
And his replacement, Jack Haley.
Yeah.
They had to change the makeup for him.
They did. He used an aluminum paste instead, which was applied over clown white grease paint to protect his skin from absorbing the toxic powder.
But even that wasn't completely safe.
No. Even with that safer formulation, Haley still suffered a severe eye infection from the metallic content of the makeup. It just proves how inherently dangerous these materials were.
It's genuinely interesting that despite Haley replacing him, the sources confirm that you can still hear Buddy Ebsen's singing voice in the background of some of the group vocals.
Yes, on We're Off to See the Wizard. It's like a ghostly vocal reminder of the original cast.
The dangers were not isolated, though. Margaret Hamilton, who immortalized the Wicked Witch of the West, suffered third-degree burns while filming her exit from Munchkinland.
This was a really complex special effect. She was supposed to disappear on a concealed elevator, dropping below the stage level as fire and smoke erupted to hide the transition.
But on the second take, something went terribly wrong.
The flames burst forth prematurely. They ignited her copper-based green face paint. She sustained third-degree burns to her hands and her face.
And she needed 3 months to recuperate from that.
3 months. And because her makeup contained toxic copper compounds, the makeup artist, Jack Young, had to use alcohol rather than acetone to remove the paint. It slowed the process dramatically and added to her pain, but it prevented a potentially fatal infection. When you watch that iconic dramatic exit, you are watching a moment where she was truly put in grave danger.
And the studio's push for dangerous effects didn't stop there. Hamilton refused to return for some pickup shots that involved the flying broomstick, which also billowed smoke.
So her stunt double, Betty Danko, took over, and she was also severely injured when the smoke mechanism on the broomstick malfunctioned during a subsequent shot.
These stories just underscore the brutal physical toll of early cinema. But perhaps the most enduringly tragic story is the systemic abuse that Judy Garland endured at the hands of the studio system itself.
It's a horrifying illustration of the control the Golden Age studios had over their young talent. To maintain her look, the studio allegedly went to extreme lengths.
The allegations are devastating. Sources report the studio bound her chest to make her look younger.
And they administered benzodrine, a powerful stimulant known as a pep pill, to control her weight and keep her energized through the grueling 16-hour days.
Then, of course, they had to give her downers, sleeping pills, just to help her sleep at night.
This forced chemical regimen was just devastatingly destructive. It became a pattern for the rest of her life.
And on top of that systemic control, there are reports in memoirs and other sources that she was subjected to harassment on the set.
Yes, claims have been reported that various cast members, particularly some of the Munchkin actors, propositioned and pinched her.
Furthermore, Garland herself claimed in later interviews that she was groped by the head of the studio, Louis B. Mayer. These are just terrible allegations that highlight the immense pressure and vulnerability she faced as a young girl, isolated in a brutal, controlling studio environment.
Even her basic appearance was micromanaged to an extraordinary degree, even after George Cukor told her to embrace her natural look.
She still had to wear false teeth to cover misaligned natural teeth, and rubber discs inserted into her nostrils to refine the shape of her nose. A painful intervention the studio demanded.
And that manipulation lasted for years. She was forced to continue wearing those false teeth and rubber discs for 5 more years of filming, until the makeup artist on Meet Me in St. Louis in 1944 finally just threw them away. It is shocking how far the studio went to manufacture a specific, standardized look.
The hardships extended to the main supporting cast as well. Burt Lahr, who played the Cowardly Lion. His costume was made from real lion skin and fur.
That costume was incredibly heavy. It weighed nearly 90 pounds. And you combine that with the dense makeup and the hot studio lighting required for Technicolor. The heat was just overwhelming.
And because of the elaborate makeup, he was initially forced to only subsist on soup and milkshakes during breaks.
He became sick from the lack of proper nutrition and eventually demanded normal meals, forcing the makeup team to accept the extra work of redoing his complex applications after lunch. A small victory, but one that speaks to the exhausting demands placed on him.
And even the pioneering phone latex makeup, which was developed by an artist named Jack Dawn for The Lion and the Scarecrow.
Yeah.
Even that came with consequences.
Ray Bolger's scarecrow mask was so adherent that peeling it off his face every single day left permanent lines around his mouth and his chin.
So when you look closely at the final close-ups of these actors, you are truly looking at the physical evidence of their difficult, painful labor. They were pushing the boundaries of technology, and they paid a very real physical price for it.
This profound discomfort and danger were direct results of the studio's obsession with the new 3-strip Technicolor process. It demanded extreme technical adjustments and colossal infrastructure that just amplified the physical challenges tenfold.
This is where the technical history gets truly fascinating. While Oz was not the first Technicolor film, it had been around for a few years. Its extensive use really solidified the 3-strip subtractive process as the ultimate standard for fantasy filmmaking.
Yeah.
And that standard required monumental effort.
And this is why the actors were suffering in those heavy costumes. 3-strip Technicolor demanded extremely large and incredibly hot lights. To get the proper exposure, the light had to be nearly blinding.
And the result was that set temperatures consistently soared above 100 degrees Fahrenheit or 38 degrees Celsius.
So imagine wearing real lion fur or heavy metallic grease paint in those conditions, working 6 days a week, 15 or 16-hour days, starting before dawn just for makeup application. It required a level of physical stamina from everyone involved that is just unimaginable today.
All because of the camera's demands.
And that level of lighting and production scale had a shocking financial footprint, even before you consider the actor salaries. The electricity bill generated by the production was estimated at a staggering $225,000.
Back then, in 1939.
Yes. To put that into perspective for you, that $225,000 electricity bill is equivalent to well over $5 million in today's currency.
That's just to power the lights necessary to film in color. It just underscores the immense high-stakes financial gamble MGM was taking on this one film.
So we have immense heat, toxic makeup, crippling utility costs, all in the service of visual magic. But the special effects themselves were also incredibly innovative and sometimes relied on unexpected and, unfortunately, inherently dangerous materials.
The famous tornado scene is a great example of pure early cinematic ingenuity. The special effects director, Arnold Gillespie, had tried using rubber first, but it didn't create the right visual energy.
So he settled on a completely different approach. He used 35 feet of lightweight muslin cloth, hung from a steel gantry, The bottom of the cloth was connected to a rod.
And by moving the gantry and the rod, they could simulate the tornado's movement across the landscape.
And they used compressed air hoses spraying fuller's earth, which is a kind of finely ground clay, to simulate the dust and dirt swirling up around it.
And a fascinating bit of trivia is that the sources confirm this successful stock footage of the tornado was later recycled.
It was. It was used for a climactic scene in the 1943 musical film Cabin in the Sky. Nothing went to waste in the studio system.
Other creative uses of materials abounded. For the famous horse of a different color sequence, the horses were just white horses colored with Jell-O powder.
An ingenious way to create quickly changing color that looked vibrant on the new film stock.
But the material choices also raised some very serious questions about the safety standards of the time, especially when we consider the use of asbestos.
Yes, the sources confirm that asbestos was used extensively for several effects. It was used to create the look of the Wicked Witch's burning broomstick, which we now know contained a volatile mix of copper and asbestos.
But the most shocking use was for the fake snow that falls over Dorothy and her friends as they sleep in the field of poppies.
That snow was asbestos. It is chilling to realize that every time you watch that field of poppies, you are watching actors working under known hazardous conditions. This context, again, just underscores the systemic risks that were taken during early film production in the pursuit of spectacle.
Moving from the technical spectacle to the sonic landscape, the film's musical core is often cited as its most perfect and enduring achievement.
The music, composed by Harold Arlen with lyrics by E.Y. Yip Harburg, it just defines the film. As we noted, it won the Academy Award for Best Original Song, and Over the Rainbow currently holds the undisputed #1 spot on the American Film Institute's 100 Years.100 Songs list.
But just like the scripting and the directing, the musical production was characterized by intense fighting and wrangling, which led to some crucial cuts. The initial running time was almost 2 hours.
Which meant they had to trim at least 15 minutes following some disastrous sneak previews.
One of the most famous lost musical sequences is the Jitterbug. This was an elaborate swing-style song and dance number.
It was intended for the sequence where the group journeys toward the witch's castle, and it was cut purely for time constraints to speed up the pacing of that journey.
And while the film footage itself is lost, thankfully, rehearsal footage and the audio recording have survived.
Yes. The only structural remnant of that massive number in the final film is a single, curious line of dialogue where the witch tells her flying monkeys that she has sent a little insect ahead to fight Dorothy's friends.
It's amazing how much work can be reduced to one throwaway line. And another significant cut involved the choreography of a very famous director.
The renowned choreographer Busby Berkeley, known for his elaborate kaleidoscopic musical numbers, he directed an incredibly intricate dance sequence for the Scarecrow right after If I Only Had a Brain.
And that was also deemed too long and elaborate for the film's narrative rhythm and was removed from the final cut.
They also removed emotional moments. Judy Garland had a brief, intense reprise of Over the Rainbow that she sang live on set while she was trapped in the witch's castle, a truly heartbreaking moment.
But it was deemed too emotionally intense and was removed to keep the pace moving. They also took out a massive celebration number. Hail, hail, the witch is dead.
All those cuts were driven by the need for pacing. But the single most crucial creative battle was over whether to keep the film's signature song, Over the Rainbow, in the movie at all.
It is genuinely astonishing to consider that the song, now ranked as the greatest movie song of all time, was nearly scrapped by the studio executives.
They had three main concerns, which really tell you everything you need to know about the lack of artistic foresight in some corners of the studio system back then.
So what were their reasons for trying to cut it?
Well, first, they thought the song made the Kansas sequence too long and it slowed the film down. Second, they argued that the lyrics and the emotional depth were far over the heads of the target audience of the children.
And the third one is the most ridiculous.
It really is. They felt it was degrading for a major star like Garland to be singing a ballad in a barnyard setting with farm animals.
That is just profound artistic myopia. Who saved it?
It was a collective fight. It was led by producer Mervyn LeRoy, associate producer Arthur Freed, and director Victor Fleming. They all fought passionately to keep the song in the film.
And they prevailed, thankfully. That single decision fundamentally altered film history and cemented Over the Rainbow as Judy Garland's signature song for the rest of her life.
Looking at this entire history, the revolving door of writers and directors, the toxic working conditions, the soaring costs, the battle to preserve the music, it seems impossible that the film achieved any level of success.
And yet the initial box office reaction was a genuine historical paradox.
It was a massive financial disappointment at first, despite being very popular with audiences. The film had an immense budget, around $2.7 to $2.8 million in 1939.
Which made it one of the most expensive projects of the year, second only to Gone with the Wind.
Exactly. So a $2.7 million budget in 1939 meant the financial stakes were astronomical.
So how much did they actually lose?
Well, you couple that with the massive marketing and distribution costs for a Technicolor feature, and the film posted an initial loss of $1,145,000 for MGM.
That's a massive financial drain for a studio, even on a critical hit. It was popular, but the sheer cost of that Technicolor spectacle meant it just wasn't profitable.
And it's important for you to understand this dramatic financial failure in context. For a film that became the foundation of modern fantasy cinema, it did not actually break even for MGM until its re-release a full decade later, in 1949.
Despite that initial financial struggle, the film's popularity did lead to some crucial business outcomes for its star.
Yes. Author Christopher Finch notes that this critical success eventually led to Judy Garland signing a new contract with MGM. It gave her a substantial salary increase and temporarily established her as one of the top 10 box office stars in the country.
But the film's true financial and cultural destiny was decided by a technology no one could have possibly predicted in 1939.
Television.
Television, absolutely. The film was reintroduced to the American public in a massive, repeatable way when MGM sold CBS the rights to televise it for $225,000 per broadcast.
And its television premiere on November 3rd, 1956 was a huge event.
The ratings were staggering. It garnered a Nielsen rating of 33.9 and an audience share of 53%. And when it was repeated in 1959, the numbers actually went up.
That annual ritual cemented its legacy for entire generations of Americans who grew up seeing it once a year, every year, for decades. That constant, repeated exposure is why the U.S. Library of Congress named it the most seen film in cinematic history.
And this pervasive influence has made it a global cultural touchstone. It's generated countless references that we still use today. I mean, phrases from the film are instantly recognizable.
There's no place like home.
Toto, I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore.
Those lines are just deeply ingrained in our lexicon. The American Film Institute ranked those two quotes at numbers 23 and 4, respectively, on their 100 greatest movie quotes list. It's hard to think of another film with such a high concentration of instantly quotable lines.
What's fascinating here is that the film's influence isn't just sentimental or anecdotal. It's actually quantifiable.
Yes, a 2018 study from the University of Turin used data to measure success and significance across 47,000 films worldwide. And it named The Wizard of Oz the most influential film of all time.
It topped the list, followed by the Star Wars franchise and Psycho.
That influence flows directly into the work of modern filmmakers. Directors across the spectrum, from David Lynch, whose use of Oz is explored in the documentary Lynch Oz,
to Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, and Greta Gerwig. They've all voiced deep admiration for its structural and artistic influence.
The famous film critic Roger Ebert praised the film precisely because its underlying story, as he put it, penetrates straight to the deepest insecurities of childhood, stirs them, and then reassures them. It addresses those core human anxieties about feeling lost and powerless.
The connection is often profoundly personal. The novelist Salman Rushdie, for instance, considered The Wizard of Oz his very first literary influence. He wrote that when he first saw it, it made a writer of me.
And that inspiration continues today. It shows up in massive adaptations and these huge technological reimaginings.
The modern mythology surrounding Oz is continually expanding through official and unofficial sequels and adaptations. It proves its core themes are endlessly malleable.
We've seen so many variations. The Tony Award-winning musical The Wiz, which opened on Broadway in 1974, provided a groundbreaking all-black interpretation.
And then there was Disney's darker 1985 film Return to Oz. It's since achieved cult status, and some consider it a more faithful adaptation of the later, more unsettling Baumbach's.
And the most successful modern adaptation is, without a doubt, Gregory Maguire's novel Wicked,
which became the hugely successful 2003 musical. Wicked has now become the second highest-grossing Broadway musical of all time.
That show just demonstrates the infinite capacity of this mythology to support new narratives. It's now being adapted into a two-part film released in 2024 and 2025. It speaks volumes that a story about the Wicked Witch of the West can be turned into a globally successful cultural juggernaut that rivals the original.
Even now, new remakes are on the horizon, showing the story's adaptability. Kenya Barris is writing and directing a modern version that shifts the setting from Kansas to the bottoms of Inglewood, California.
And he intends for this version to discuss modern societal self-reliance, echoing the original film's core themes of finding strength within and reinforcing the idea that where they're at is where they should be.
But the film's influence isn't just about new stories. It's about the artifacts themselves. The original costume pieces are now among the most treasured and valuable film memorabilia in history.
The most famous artifacts are, of course, the ruby slippers.
And it's essential to remember why they are ruby. The shoes were silver in L. Frank Baum's book, but screenwriter Noel Langley changed the color to ruby specifically to take full advantage of that new three-strip Technicolor process.
It was a conscious decision designed to maximize the visual spectacle and the color coding of Oz, and it worked brilliantly. The slippers are iconic. Of the many pairs used in the film, 5 are known to exist today.
One of the most famous pairs is housed at the Smithsonian National Museum of American History.
But the history of these shoes is almost as dramatic as the film's plot. One pair was stolen in 2005 while it was on loan to the Judy Garland Museum in her hometown.
And the FBI recovered them in a complex sting operation in 2018.
The recovery story is incredible, and the financial value is just staggering. While the slippers were insured for $1 million when they were stolen, their value skyrocketed. In December 2024, one of the 4 authentic, intact pairs sold at auction for over $32 million.
$32 million. That significantly exceeded the previous record for entertainment memorabilia. It demonstrates the colossal economic and cultural power these artifacts command.
And other costumes fetch high values, too. Dorothy's blue gingham dress, for example, sold at auction for nearly $1.6 million in 2015.
And another version was recently found at the Catholic University of America. It was identifiable by 2 specific characteristics: a secret pocket for Dorothy's handkerchief and Judy Garland's name written inside the garment.
The film's pervasive influence is also seen in global theme parks. While it used to have its own scene at the Great Movie Ride at Disney Hollywood Studios, it's still represented in miniature at Disneyland Paris and Disneyland as part of the storybook Land Canal Boats.
And Warner Bros. Movie World, showing the film's enduring relevance, opened a whole new precinct based on the 1939 film in 2024.
And finally, we arrive at the most cutting-edge adaptation, blending this 1939 history with hypermodern technology. The Wizard of Oz at the Sphere in Las Vegas.
This is the ultimate technological challenge for a classic film.
It's a truly ambitious project. It's an immersive 75-minute version of the film starting in August 2025, a collaboration between Sphere Entertainment, Warner Bros., and Google.
And they're using advanced AI models, specifically VO2 and Imagen 3 Gemini, to handle the massive technical workload.
So why is AI necessary? The primary challenge is adapting a 1939 film which was shot on relatively small film stock to the Sphere's colossal curved screen, which displays at 16K resolution.
To put that in perspective for you, 16K resolution is 4 times the quality of modern 4K home televisions and far beyond any commercial cinema screen.
If you simply project the original 1939 film onto that surface, it would look tiny, pixelated, and just lost. The AI's job is twofold. First, it upscales the video resolution dramatically, making the original footage look sharp.
And second, and this is the crucial part, it uses generative AI to create additional imagery and expand the shots beyond the original rectangular film frame, filling that vast, curved space convincingly.
We're talking about taking a piece of footage from 1939 and asking a machine to invent the surrounding environment in a way that feels seamless and organic. It reportedly required processing 1.2 petabytes of data, which is over 1 million gigabytes, just to handle the conversion.
The sound component is equally impressive. The film's soundtrack was remastered to fit the Sphere's immersive audio system, and the entire score was re-recorded.
With a massive 80-piece orchestra conducted by David Newman. And the sonic connection to history is beautiful. The re-recording was done on the very same scoring stage where the original 1939 score was recorded,
linking the production across the decades.
And to make it fully immersive, the experience will incorporate live, multi-sensory effects. For those unfamiliar, haptics refers to physical sensations. The seats will shake, you will feel the wind of the cyclone, experience fog, and even smell scents related to the scene.
It is a fusion of one of cinema's oldest masterpieces with the newest, most computational technology available.
And the resulting soundtrack is slated to include a moving a cappella version of Over the Rainbow, sung by Judy Garland, creating an intimate moment within that overwhelming technological experience.
This whole project really symbolizes the film's unique legacy. A movie created with toxic copper makeup, asbestos snow, and actors suffering in 100-degree heat is now being upscaled by state-of-the-art artificial intelligence for a 16K screen.
It encapsulates the entire history of cinema's progress and the human effort required to achieve spectacle.
That is the ultimate synthesis. The Wizard of Oz transcends being merely a classic film. It's a historical nexus of technical innovation, a painful history of human labor, and a wellspring for cultural output. From top-grossing Broadway hits to cutting-edge AI screen experiences that continues to evolve and resonate today.
Indeed. It is a testament to the enduring power of a simple story told through groundbreaking means, even if that storytelling came at an intense cost to those who brought it to life.
Which brings us to a final thought for you to consider. This film we consider one of the happiest, most timeless classics was ultimately built on profound technical and personal misery. Does great art always require a great human cost? Or can we look back on films like The Wizard of Oz and hope that future artistry is created with less suffering?
We hope these insights have provided you with a new, deeper perspective on a film you thought you knew so well.
Thanks for listening.